Hey there, Shooby-Doodlers, how are you doing? Well, I had a message from Nikki this week over on Patreon, and she asked me if I would have a look at a piece of artwork she was having trouble with. So I thought maybe I could make this video, make some suggestions, and maybe sort of be a bit of help to other people too. It's like a kind of drawing watercolour clinic. But let's not talk about it. Let's go and see what Nikki's problem is. This is what Nikki posted, and she says, challenge, how do you make wiry white hair? If I start penning it in, then it makes him look too young. And actually this man had puff and wisps in the back, but I couldn't figure it out. He looked a little electrified. Also, how do you make sweater textures? I accidentally touched my page when the paint was wet and then just continued that all around, but not quite right. Suggestions. It does look a little electrified. Let me tell you what I do like first. I like around here, Nikki has kind of thought ahead to this being a watercolour, and she's not drawn every little detail. So if you look around here, then there's a lot of detail going on in the glasses. But here, there's just a suggestion of a line, and that's kind of thinking forwards that you're going to paint a little bit of the arm of the glasses in there, and here there's just little suggestions of ears. So I like that, and I quite like this sweater texture. This all depends on how big the drawing is originally, and looking at this I have a feeling it's probably about 3 inches maybe across, something like that, maybe 4 inches, which will be like sort of 7-8 centimeters. It's really difficult if you're drawing pen and ink and it's going to be black and white, then I think you would do it differently. And if you're drawing pen and ink for watercolour, then you can afford to put less detail in and hope that the watercolour is going to do that. So we had this kind of problem up here. This looks like Tesla having been electrocuted. So yes, all this around here is really tricky, and part of it is going to be about painting in the background, because white hair is obviously going to be the colour of the paper, and so you can use the background of the paper to bring the white hair forward, but it does kind of look like it's sort of white flames pouring out of the back of his head at the moment, and we want to try and change that somehow. And we have a kind of a hard edge here to the beard, so let's see what we can do about this. So here we are. I've printed out Nikki's picture at the size that I imagine she's done it. I might be wrong. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve here. If it's a portrait in a frame, it's a different thing as to if it's going to be a character in a book or something like that. It's an illustration. So I think illustrations and portraits are very different things. A portrait is about a particular person, and you're trying to get the essence of them that you know. Whereas an illustration is much more about a character, and you're kind of telling a story about that person. I'm an illustrator, so I'm going to treat this as an illustrator. And I've got this on my light pad here. If you want to know more about light pads, I'll put a link up here to videos that I've done, and there are links down below to Amazon and things like that. And if you buy one, I get a little commission, and that helps keep this channel running. So let's have a look. I'm going to put a bit of thin paper over the top here, and this is called layout paper, and it's just very light, and it's great for doing things like this. And what I would actually normally do is think ahead and think, I might need to do this more than once. I'm going to do this on the bottom half of the paper, and then I can turn it over if I need to. Use the other half, saving paper. And then let me zoom in. I think these glasses are very important, so I'm going to draw them in first, and we want to get them even. Now here we've got this little knock on the side there, so we need a little knock on the side there too, and we want to try and get them fairly even like that. And then the eyes. Now I think so these eyes are looking really big. So I'm kind of assuming that these are really thick glasses, and you're going to want to have the pupils the same size, and I'm going to do a little bit like that with a little
So it's slightly starey, and I'm going to put a little line in up above it as well, and one down below. And then the eyebrows, I'm just going to put, he's going to have very kind of wispy eyebrows, and I'm just going to put these kind of suggestions in, really, of eyebrow hair. And then we're going to have that going there, and that will be coming back. And I think Nikki's got that about right. So something's different here, isn't it? That we're seeing the whole of this ear. Let's do the nose next. So I'm going to add a little bit more around on that nose, just to take it around a bit there. And we're going to get those cheeks. And I think we could probably get some sort of old age lines in around about there as well. And I think we need much sort of lighter, featherier kind of lines for the hair on the moustache, and we'll have a few there as well. And I'm not going to draw a line, but I'm going to suggest a line by putting those bits in there. And I think I'm going to do the rest with watercolour, but that'll be sort of underneath his lip. Let's think about this bit here. So I think we're going to get, he wants to be wispy, so let's do wispy kind of hair, and that's going to be coming up into his sort of sideburns there. And I feel we're going to have the same thing going on here that we're going to have there. So we need kind of curly hair, but he's quite clipped down here, isn't it? So it's a bit tricky. So I'm just going to draw really a suggestion of his hair, of his beard, and some more little bits in there. And I've usually got a bit of sort of sprouting out from underneath the bottom of the lip there. His neck is very wide, like he's sort of an international swimming star. So I'm going to make his neck a little less obvious. Here we're going to get probably a few little hairs sort of sticking in there, and then I think we can maybe lighten up that line and think about where this is going to go. So it wants to be wispy rather than electrocuted. Sorry, Nikki. So if we made that more kind of wispy like that, and you see, I like this little bit that's going on down here. So let's put the ear in there. It's going to be something going on. So this is kind of curling around down there, isn't it? And we can maybe put those sort of curls in there. Of course, I haven't got the original person in front of me or the reference photograph, so I'm not quite sure. And I think here we need to draw these lines much more sort of sensitively, kind of like that. And we've probably got kind of folds and lines in there as in the eyebrows as well. And here, although it's white, we can put some little bits of sort of hair suggestion in there too. Now the collar, let's bring that up here. So we're going to have like the sweater is there, and then the collar will come up around like that and around like that, and then it's going to come kind of down there and then up. It's going to come down there and then up there as well. So we're going to get that bit of texture kind of ribbing around there, aren't we? And then there's going to be the throat bit there, Adam's apple. Probably got a bit of Adam's apple in there as well. So then I think the sweater, it depends on kind of quite how thick the sweater is that he's wearing. And if it's, if you're after some sort of cable knit, some kind of really chunky knit, then we can probably do something like this. And you don't want anything too distracting, really, because it'll take over the drawing. It'll become a drawing of a sweater pattern rather than the person inside it. So basically you're drawing the kind of the shaded part. So let's have a look at that without the bit underneath it. Those glasses are very, very heavy at the moment, aren't they? I'm getting a piece of cartridge paper. We call it cartridge paper here, but I think in other parts of the world it's called Bristol paper. But that's confusing because we kind of think of Bristol paper as being something different in this country. A much smoother finished paper. So it's just kind of drawing paper, really. To get regular drawing hints, tips and inspiration, click subscribe, ring the bell and select all notifications.
So at this point, as an illustrator, there are no rules here, and you can do as many tracings and versions and things as you like until you're really happy with the drawing, and then you can paint it in. There really are no rules, and you can work from photographs, you can work from life, you can trace it and trace it and trace it until you get, that's what I like. That's the one I like, and that's exactly what I want. And then you can colour it in, and then you can paint it, you can watercolour it, you can digitize it, you can do whatever you like. But Nikki, I think, wants to do watercolour, so that's what I'm going to try and do now.
So I think I need to really kind of lighten up these glasses, and I think Nikki wants them sort of a bit lighter too, I think, because that's the way she's sort of drawn them. Oh, they've gone a bit smaller, I think, than Nikki's. So I'm making them, the frame slightly lighter around the edge. So I'm just going to draw these eyes in there, and they're a bit starey, aren't they? So I'm actually going to draw like that, and I'm going to make the eyeballs, the pupils, just slightly smaller, I think. And I think here we can put this kind of furrowed brow in there, and then these big white eyebrows. So the white is really going to be in the paint, and I might add white paint on top at the end as well. And then let's do this up around here. So he's got this very bald head, and then this kind of wispy kind of hair sticking out at the top, in a kind of Einstein kind of style. And then we're going to want these to sort of clip over the ears like that. And we're going to have sort of, older guys have these sort of whiskers on their cheeks. And we can maybe bring that in, because I quite like this kind of curling bit down there, and I think I need to kind of just slightly bring this beard under more control, because this is more kind of more barbered, isn't it? I think like that. And then we'll do this nose. Oh, that's not, yeah, anyway, there we go. I wasn't quite concentrating there. And then I'm going to bring this sort of out a little bit like that, and then flicking upwards there, flicking downwards there, and then maybe a couple of little extra things in there. And then we want the bottom lip, maybe a few more bits in there. And then I still think we can actually make this a little bit thinner, in which case we can bring that collar around there like that. And it can come down there, and you can see the shoulders are going to have to change. Okay, so we've got that ribbing bit on there, so the shoulders will become more down there, because I think he's kind of, he did have these kind of sort of Olympic swimmer kind of shoulders before. and sort of Adam's apple and the throat. And then I'm going to draw in these sort of cable knit kind of pattern like that. I think the thing that's going to be happening here is going to be all about sort of painting in a background to allow the white hair to stand out.
If you watch this far, you obviously love drawing, so why not support this channel? Come and join me on Patreon, get help sheets and insights and so much more.
Okay, let's have a look back here. Now, Nikki's put a shadow in here, which looks like he's right up against the wall. And we've got a brown background, and this is green. So the background is really going to have a big effect with the green of the jumper. And I'm just trying to think what might be a better colour. You know, sometimes you have a photo that you've got a reference from, or the person you've got is sat in a chair with it. You know, if you're actually sort of working from life, and you can think, oh, it has to be like that, but it doesn't, you know, and you might find that different things, different colours work better together. I'm going to start, as I usually do, with the face, and I'm using Naples yellow. He's a white guy, so I'm going to leave a little bit there on the top there, and I'm not painting down to the eyebrows, and so I'm getting a bit of, I think, vermilion or scarlet lake. I think it's scarlet lake, just to kind of add a bit of so there we go. I'm going to try and get that out from there. Put some more Naples yellow in there. Those who watch me a lot know how much I love Naples yellow. I think probably every artist has their go-to colours and go-to kind of ways of doing things, and I always find it fascinating when I watch other people think, oh, I never thought of doing that. So I'm going to leave a little bit of shine there, and a little bit of shine at the bottom of the nose there as well, I think, and a bit of shine on the cheeks. So I'm just leaving a little bit of kind of white, and again we're going to pop that in around there. So this is to kind of get this is getting some sort of extra colour in, but it's also getting some sort of shading in at the same time. And there's something that Nikki mentioned on a video of mine the other day, which I'll sort of bring about when I come to do the jumper, the sweater. And those are the ears. And so I'm just sort of dropping in while it's wet. And again, this is with watercolour, you know, you can, this is, I'm working wet on wet here, because you get much more subtle, faded kind of sort of, the colours blend into each other. They kind of, because it's wet, they just kind of, I'm trying to think what the word is, sponge into each other. They kind of soak into each other and do it very nice and softly is probably the word I'm after. I'm just going to add a bit more into there. So just making it a little bit sort of darker in there. And I think probably could put a little bit darker in there as well. And then I'm cleaning my brush, so then I can just kind of put water in to let that kind of fade. Now we're actually going to need this a bit darker underneath here, because he's got the eyebrows above. So, and then I'm allowing that to sort of go up into the white eyebrows there. And again, I think we're going to want to have, oh, I need to get the water flowing here again. And we're going to want a little bit of dark kind of underneath the eyes there as well. And because of that, I think I'm going to put a little bit around there and just sort of fade that up, sort of above the eyebrows there. Now he's going to have a lip underneath there. That's looking a little bit pouty, a pouting bottom lip, isn't it? That there now. So originally he's looking a little bit sort of serious. Whereas I suppose I was sort of giving him a little bit of a smile here now. And I don't think I'm going to do much more than that. And then we need to do something in the eyes as well, around here, or in the glasses. And I think maybe I might, put some bits of white in on the top afterwards. So that again wants to be kind of darker along there, because you've got the brow is casting a shadow down, and also the glasses are creating a bit of a shadow too. So the whites of the eyes are never really white, so I'm just going to put some shadow into the whites of the eyes, and I'll leave that for the moment. So now I'm going to think about the background, and I think I'm going to have more of a blue than a brown, unless you're particularly wanting the brown. As an illustration, you could of course have a beautifully painted wallpaper or something like that. And I am going to go for something along these lines, I think, and maybe with a bit of something a bit sort of purpley blue. And this is where we want to do something with the hair. So I really want to kind of whoosh this in here very quickly, so that we can, and I'm going to hold the brush right at the end, so that I can kind of it's more like kind of drawing. So trying to get some kind of suggestion of sort of a hair, I suppose. that's what we're after, isn't it? As ever, I think it's quite hard while you're sort of planning and thinking. I'm thinking on the spot here. I'm sort of thinking, what shall I do? This? Shall I do that? Shall I do this? And making decisions and changing things on the fly by the second, and then at the same time trying to talk and explain what I'm doing. And as I've said many times before, you're using two totally different parts of the brain to do those things. And it can sometimes your brain get a brain freeze and it doesn't quite work. So I'm going to add a bit more of that, and then now while it's wet now, I think what I'm going to do is to make it darker down here, along there, and this is where. So I mean, I know Nikki was also asking about brushes and things. As he said, I was working with a really fine brush on another video, and Clay, who's another one of my patrons, he was asking about, can you use a water brush on a commercial project? Like is it a real brush? This is a water brush, and some people would think this is just a toy or something just for going out sketching with. But I think if it works for you, it works for you, and so use it. Now this is where I think we can try it, and I'm going to use the brush right at the top, so I'm kind of drawing with it, and I'm wanting this sort of have a bit of a sort of a halo of darker paint, which we can then kind of work our way into that outline, and then be a bit more whooshy on the outside. And I'm not sure how this is going to work with the green. So now I'm going to dry this with my hairdryer. Of course, I should have stretched this out. Now it's gone all kind of lumpy and bumpy, but never mind. I'm not intending this to go in a frame or anything like that. People often say, what happens to your artwork? It all goes into a cardboard box. It goes up into the attic where to join all the other thousands of bits of artwork up there. We're going to want a bit of skin tone underneath here as well, aren't we? But that, again, is going to be... let's get some scarlet in there. That's a bit too much, isn't it? And again, we can just kind of flick this up into the beard like that, and add a bit of sort of shadow in there too. I'm going to do the sweater in the green like Nikki's done, and I quite like this kind of way she's done the texture there. So I think we probably need a little bit of ochre or something in there just to slightly warm that up a bit. And now what I'm going to do is just paint this green, and just sort of I'm just kind of flooding the area really, as this, I suppose you call it an undercoat, preliminary coat, or the flood coat, something. I'm not sure what you would call it. I've become more and more aware that, because I never got taught to paint watercolours, and I went to art college and they were so hands off there. Oh no, we don't want to teach you anything, we'll spoil your style. And so, you know, I had to kind of work it all out really myself. And I'm very aware that I do things that other people don't do. So Nikki was asking me, saying, why are you dropping in a kind of a darker colour? Is that for shadow or what? Well, it is. It's for light and shade. And you know, you're going to have if you look at if you look at the jumper, then you know it's got its basic colour that it's been dyed, but then you've got the light. I'm assuming a little bit of light on his shoulders, which is making it lighter on the top there. And as you get into the shadows, it'll get darker and darker and darker. But you're going to go from hues. So up at the top, this is a hue, which means that it's pale and has white added to it. And then it'll kind of reach an intensity of hue, which is what I'm sort of aiming to do here. So now I'm kind of bringing these up here. So rather than sort of making it shadow, I want it to get an intensity of hue, creating the shadows, which will obviously be a bit darker underneath there. We can bring that up there, and that'll be darker. And then and then you start going into shades, which is the addition of black. And once you start adding black in watercolour, it all starts to get a little bit messy. So try and do all your, in watercolour, try and do all your shadows as much as possible with hues. Intensity of hues. And so now I can come back to the hair. So we want a little bit of blue in the hair, I think. And then here I've got my neutral tint that I love so much. I never use black. Black just punches holes in watercolour, and it just doesn't kind of work really. So we want it to be sort of white on the outside, so we can just do this very sort of thin, you know, let me do another brush. Why would I use another brush? Well, to get this kind of thin, you know, because this is quite a big chunky brush, and I love it, you know, and I can do an awful lot with it. But if I want to do something really thin, then really you want a thinner brush, don't you? And I'm just very delicately just brushing over the surface really. They're very light, and that can be a bit darker behind there. Just very light strokes. And again here we can have a bit darker underneath, because we're going to have shadow there. And again here it's going to be a bit more sort of shaded underneath that bit of moustache there. It's going to be a bit more shaded. I'm assuming the light is coming in this direction as well, so so we can maybe have it a little bit darker under there. I'm trying to sort of meld that in with the lips as well. So it's just kind of, we don't want it to be too dark really. And then the moustache will be quite dark underneath there, I should imagine, and we're probably going to get a bit of darkness at the bottom of it, like that. I think we can see the eyes. So that's a really, really dark blue. That's too blue. You wouldn't really have eyes that blue, I don't think. So I'm going to paint those in there, and I'm just going to, I've dried the brush. I'm just going around soaking up extra colour, and then I'm going to put a little bit of more darker colour in along the top hemisphere, like that. So we're going to want something with a bit of brown in it. I'm just going to put these little shadows underneath there and kind of across the top. And probably in there we're going to have definite shadows. Oh, under there. And I think we're probably going to have some fairly definite sort of colour in there as well from the lips, because it'll be shadow coming in there. He's got a red shirt on, so I'll come back to the Aquash Pentel water brush. The link's down below. And if I can remember to put a review of this a long time ago, I'll try and put a link up here if I remember. A subscriber asked me to do a review, and they said, what did I think of it? And so I bought one, and it just sat there for about 6 months. And I thought it just looks so cheap and nasty and horrible. Plastic. I thought it's just a cheap toy for kids. And eventually one day I couldn't think what video to do, so that I'll just do a video about unboxing it. And I got it out. It's like, oh wow, that's amazing. So again here, while it's wet, I'm sort of dropping in the darker. It's a more full strength amount of paint to create that sort of fuller hue, and then I can come back to the green, because this is now, and I'm going to mix that red in with it. So this is now dried a bit, so I can now kind of put that darker colour over the top, so it's sort of wet on dry, and I'm just going to be accentuating these the cable knit pattern on here. Now I think we need to work on the glasses, which Nikki has done in a kind of an orangey colour, but I suspect it's probably kind of a tortoise shell. So I think we can start with a kind of an orangey colour. We need more red in there, so let's have some more ochre. So an ochre reddy brown. Try not to rub my hand all over the paint that's still wet. So you of course can go and have a nice tea break and let the paint dry, but I'm a slave to the camera and have to sort of keep painting. And we can maybe make that a little bit sort of darker in places to get that kind of tortoiseshell look. And sometimes the little sort of black flecks in the tortoiseshell, aren't there? Something like that. I'm never happy drawing glasses. Perhaps I should sort of do a series of trying to draw glasses. I don't suppose I've ever really studied it, that's the problem. I think really what we need to do is to put a little sort of fine shadow in there. I think we're going to want to have shadows underneath there as well. Now I'm just going to dry this. I think we need more kind of lines and things in here, probably. We need kind of age lines. And I've forgotten all about the kind of furrowed brow as well. So again, I think we could maybe do that by painting those lines in, and that's going to make him a bit older. And we could sort of get those older. This is something that Nikki was worried about, was trying to make him look like an old guy. Say he's lived a bit, he's earned a few lines, and I think we can put those in paint. If you know that you're going to be painting it, put them in paint rather than draw them. And I think I'm just going to do. This is where I'm going to ruin it now completely. So I'm just going to put a little bit of sort of shadow in on the nose there. No, so you can go too far with watercolour, and so this isn't something that I'm expected to put in a frame or to show ever again. So I'm feeling I can afford to just experiment and try stuff out. And I think maybe he needs a little bit more around on the nose. And like that. And I think actually he needs a little bit more in the eyeballs as well. So I'm going to do a bit more of a shade in there, and I'm also going to put a bit more shade actually on the white as well, like that. And I think we probably need a bit more going on in the ears as well. If he wanted to, I think he could. It's probably got some hint of eyelash in there as well. And this feels like it needs to be a bit darker, which then makes me feel. You see, you can just keep playing and playing and playing. Which then makes me feel that we need to have a few more very, very light kind of little marks in there, and then also over the top of this sort of the pale sort of undercoaty kind of ones that we've already done. We can have something just slightly darker, just to kind of enhance the the whiteness of the hair, so it isn't all completely white, is it? You've got some light and shade in there. Otherwise, it's just like a piece of white paper that's been stuck on his head. If it's just all white. There. Finally, I am going to leave it alone now. I'm just going to add a little bit of shadow in there. So this is neutral tint. So now we're going beyond the hue thing, and we're actually adding. I'm not adding black. I'm adding neutral tint. You could probably use Davies Grey as another one you could use in there. I just can't let go. So I'm going to put a little bit of a shade in there, and I think I'm going to put a little bit more shade just underneath there. So at this point, some people will be tempted to get a bit of white. So this is my designer's gouache, and I very rarely do this. There's something about watercolour, and I'm looking at it now, it looks really nice and fresh, And as soon as you start sort of painting white on the top, it can look just not quite right somehow. But you see, we can add in some really nice fine curly bits now if you want to do that. So there are all these kind of various techniques that you can be doing. And again, you know, here you're going to need a fine brush, and it's best if you can start in the white and then go out, because if you start in the colour there, it's going to be a bit of a blob. Whereas if you start here and then you come out, then you can flick it into a nice little point. So we can get this really nice kind of fine bits of hair sticking out on the end. And then also what we can do is in the glasses we can add a bit of highlight on the glasses themselves, because they'll be picking up some light. And that kind of helps to make them look a bit more interesting. But then we've also got on the glass, I'm just going to add a little bit more into the, make sure those highlights are high. And we can just sort of add a little bit of sort of white across the front of the glass there. That's gone too much, so I'll try and paint that out like that as a kind of a reflection. There are all sorts of things that you can keep doing. So you might kind of think, oh, I want that to be, you know, a bit brighter at the back there, and it's, you know, it's just showing up too dark. I want this kind of light coming in from the back, so you can sort of, you know, just sort of wash that in there like that. You know, we've got a sort of a spotlight behind him or something like that. So there's all sorts of things you can be doing. Well, there you are, Nikki. I hope in amongst there are some things that you can take and adapt to your own style. As ever, you can ignore everything that I've said. It's just that from looking at your picture and reading your comment about it, that was my first initial kind of thoughts. I thought, you know, yeah, that's kind of what I would do at this moment. Tomorrow I might do something entirely different. But from this video, I hope, Nikki, and I hope you have found some kind of inspiration, maybe some hints and tips and tricks. And of course, if you join me on Patreon, maybe one day I could do a bit of an art clinic on a piece of work that you're having trouble with. Who knows? Thanks for watching, and click down here and make sure you are subscribed to the Shoe Render Drawing channel, and keep coming back for lots more drawing and watercolour videos every week on YouTube. In the meantime, keep drawing, practice, and I'll see you next time. You take care now. Bye bye.